This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie, guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen. And we're saying that because today on today's show, we have two German master brewers.
Yes.
Who one is the founder of 31 years ago of Bayern Brewery, and the other one has been with them for 18 years. And what's fascinating about this Missoula-based brewery, it was one of the first of a handful of what used to be called microbreweries and now called craft breweries.
Exactly.
And they follow the 1516 German law of purity in the production of all of their beer products, which is amazing. You know, somebody, a 500-year-old, code of food, the oldest code of food.
Right.
And they employ that as they operate their
purity.
Their brewery. Only three ingredients.
Right.
It's like making croissants, or the true croissants only have 3 ingredients or 4 ingredients. Wheat, or flour, butter, salt, and I think maybe yeast.
Sure.
That's the only thing it has. They have the same thing with their beer, and they maintain that quality, regardless of whether it's called Dancing Trout or Dragon's Breath or all the names that are used to attract millennials into the brewery world, which is having a resurgence again over wine.
Sure.
It's moving up. They stick to that old principle. I'm anxious to talk to them because I'm not much of a beer person.
I was going to
ever drink. I've never
Even
liked
in your
it.
youth?
Not even in my youth. I never. Maybe at a ball game, on a hot day in a ball game, and if the beer guy, Schaefer or Ballantine. Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one. Remember that?
It's a good slogan.
And Rheingold. My beer is Rheingold, the dry beer, whatever a dry beer is.
Right.
I was never a beer person, but I'm anxious to see, if they can talk. If this is the traditional beer, if this is a 500-year-old beer, then I may have to revisit the issue of drinking beer.
I have spent a good deal of time with their beer, and I actually really, really like it. Because while I appreciate more of a hoppy beer or some of the more newfangled beers that we're getting out of some of our craft breweries here in Montana, Bayern's a good, sturdy lager. It's a good beer. And, they're also very good corporate citizens, too. They also practice what they preach. It's not just window dressing.
Yeah. I mean, I've never liked beer because to me it had a bitter flavor.
Right.
And I'm more into having something that has a lighter flavor. And but I guess they're ales, or they have light ales, pale ales.
Sure.
I may commit myself to reinvestigating the beer world, because I don't drink wine or alcohol much either.
You like rum, I thought.
I like a little rum, but if I am alone, I would never ever drink by myself. I would never like watching a sporting event on TV say, well, I'm going to go get a vodka and make myself a drink. I just don't drink. I do it when I'm forced to socially.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
What's interesting is that these guys are chefs, right? They are not only the master brewers, but they're chefs.
Yes.
And you and I both have a great appreciation for food and for, people that are innovative with food.
Right.
And you ventured out this past weekend with your new
Traeger wood pellet smoker.
Tell us about that for a second, because I think I'm fascinated because all your social media is plastered
with pictures of my smoked salmon, which I've saved you a piece of as well.
This is a man that will comment on politics more than anything. He has now switched it up.
Well, you have to have new objectives as you enter the twilight of your life.
You smoked some salmon.
I smoked salmon, and smoked salmon is not a delicacy. But as you know, there's very few places you can get really good smoked salmon. You go to a public market in Seattle.
Yes.
And, City Fish and other places there sell it for about $35 a pound.
Yeah.
And every time I buy 2 pounds and it's $70,
ridiculous.
I say, maybe I should learn how to do this somehow.
Sure, of course.
And so we had the Cowboy Ball in town,
right,
which is a fundraiser for the University of Montana rodeo team. Great event. It's been going on for years. I'm a loyal participant, and they had a Traeger wood pellet grill in their auction, in their silent auction.
Who donated it?
I can't remember.
Axman?
Ace Hardware donated.
Oh, Ace Hardware, okay.
Ace Hardware donated, and there was 2 things very appealing about it.
What were
One
they?
was, it was the right size. It was a small one because I don't have a family.
Right.
And it was assembled already, which was probably the biggest incentive. And I bid it up and made sure I won it. And I tested it with a couple of small things, just cooking, and then I decided to go out all in. Bought 3 pounds of coho salmon.
Where?
At
good food?
at Lucky's.
Oh, at Lucky's. Oh, very
They
good.
had some really good fresh coho salmon, and they're actually by chance. I don't know what are the odds of this. I'm flipping through the TV just looking for something to watch, and there was a half-an-hour Traeger TV show on one of the
fantastic.
and I watched it, and I saw recipes on how to do stuff, and then I went online and researched, and I found a recipe that wasn't the easiest, but it wasn't the hardest.
Sure.
And I did it and used it, and it came out fantastic.
You're all good, and you've cooled it off, right? You refrigerated.
Yeah, it's lasted about
some?
15 days in the refrigerator.
Oh, you ate it all?
No. I didn't eat it all.
Shaking his head at me.
Eating 3 pounds of it in 2 days, I'd be dead. I'd
wash it down
have
with a Bayern
iodine
beer.
poisoning. But it's now
You're pleased with the outcome.
totally pleased. It's good as Roost and Daughters in New York, I have to say.
Okay,
and that's
ladies and gentlemen, Google that.
Yeah. And now I'm considering getting a one of those vacuum pack machines so that I can send it out as presents to people.
We have one of those. Yeah, smart idea.
I can borrow. You have one? I'll borrow yours.
Yeah, Kathy
I'll rent
has it.
I'll rent one from you, and then I can vacuum seal.
The thing with the I don't know if she has that. She has the dryer, the food.
No, I need a vacuum sealer.
Those aren't expensive. You can get them
$100
at Costco.
$100.
Yeah, but now, Arnie, this is your new thing.
The
You're gonna
wrap-
start smoking things.
The wrapping. It's not paper. The plastic. That
Right,
they
plastic.
Use is $28 a roll.
That's ridiculous.
Well, if you
What
get
else are you
into
gonna
it,
put-
I'm going to be into it. So that's that leads me to our discussion today: food and beer, and
pairing.
we have great guests coming in and great storytellers, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the history all the way back to 1516 about the genesis of beer.
Me too, Arnie. When we come back, we'll have Jürgen and Torsten from Bayern Brewing. Back after this. Guten Morgen. Arnie, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Scott. How are you? Who are guests today? Tell our listeners who our guests are today.
Boys, the founder and the head brewmaster from Bayern Brewing here, Jürgen and Torsten, friends of ours here at the KGVO family, but we've never had him in. Never had him in on the studio. And Jürgen's quite a storyteller already.
Yes,
There are stories to be told.
Gentlemen, guten Morgen. Wie geht es Ihnen?
Guten Morgen, es geht ganz gut. Ihnen auch?
Morgen zusammen, danke für die Einladung. Wir werden hier 30 Minuten Spaß haben.
Yes.
Sei gesehen. He knows that.
I know what that means.
They do too.
Yeah.
Identify yourselves by your voices so we can know who we're talking to. Who's Jürgen?
Ich bin Jürgen.
That is Jürgen.
Und ich bin Thorsten, der Braumeister bei Bayern.
Yes. We have a brewmaster.
And you're Arnie.
And I'm Arnie. And you're Scott. So take me back to 1997 when you got started. You were really the first, microbrewery, custom brewery in Montana, maybe even in this region. Tell us what was going on then.
Well, first of all, it was 1987.
Oh, 87. Excuse me.
We're another decade earlier.
Yes. Last century. Sometime
last
near the end of the last century.
In the last quarter of
The
it.
last century, yes. So 1987.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different beer landscape. And when I'm looking at my colleagues and talk to my colleagues nowadays, I mean, things that everybody is right now taking for granted, I mean, they were simply not there. I mean, when I came over here, well, first of all, how I got here was kind of interesting. I was sidetracked. Part of the reason I became a brewer, I wanted to see the world. I wanted to travel international, doing startup operations and stuff like that.
And the Navy wasn't good enough for you?
No, not
Bavarian
really.
Navy.
The Bavarian Navy, yes.
Well,
The Navy.
actually, in the German Navy, there are more Bavarians and Northern Germans because the ones from the mountains, from the Alps, they want to go to sea,
Sure.
and the ones that live on the coast, they want to go on the mountains. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, my tender age of 19, I almost ended up in Windhoek in South Africa, and that didn't pan out with South African breweries, which nowadays own Miller and Coors. Go figure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hooked up Wiesbaden later on, and those were big breweries. And the reason why I wanted to do it is I wanted to do it because they had an international program. But make no mistake, I mean, I never really looked at America because I thought it's not exciting enough. I wanted Mongolia, China, deepest South America, Africa. I thought America was just too similar to Europe. I mean, it was basically kind of...
Where did you grow up in Germany?
I grew up in outmost southwestern city of Germany, in Sonthofen, Bavaria.
Okay.
If I tip over one way, I'm in Austria. If I tip over the other way, I'm in Switzerland.
Okay, very good.
And where were you from?
I'm from Cologne, Germany.
Cologne.
Nothing to do with Bavaria. He always calls me from the North Coast, but it's right in the middle to the western side of it.
And you've been here for how long, Torsten?
Now 18 years.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So in '87, were there craft breweries in the United States at that point?
Anchor Steam was probably the first one. Financed was a Maytag Imperium. So there was Anchor Steam. I mean, that was probably in my eyes a major pioneer.
And how did Montana come into the picture?
Well,
Yeah, how did you get here?
Delta Airlines.
Canoe. He came by canoe.
No, what happened, I mean, first of all, I mean, the microbrew scene in America was pretty much non-existent. I mean, there were like a handful of breweries. Widmer just had started out. The Shoots in Bend, Oregon, they're about when we started out at the same time. Red Hook in Seattle. Some of that stuff. But anyway, what happened to me was there was a German couple from Bavaria, and the wife, I mean, Trudy, she had a brewery in her family for over 4 centuries. And they came in the early 80s to America. They bought the Valley of the Moon Ranch. And something so the kids could learn English. I mean, they were not hurting for money or anything like that.
Right.
But anyway, since she was in the brewing industry and she heard about some smaller breweries popping up in America, they decided to buy the old Northern Pacific Railroad station and put a brewery in there, and they called it Bayern Brewing Company. And at the time, I mean, it was extremely hard just to even get equipment for small breweries because everything was either geared towards Miller, Busch, Rainier, whatever.
Right.
The
I remember
really big
when it was over there. It was a tiny little tiny space for it.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, when I came here in 1987, the microbrew of choice at the time was Rickard's Red from Canada. We had Miller, Coors, Bud, Ole's, and Rainier, and that was about it. There was a small brewery in Helena called Kessler's, and they had started like a year or 2 years before us, and they quit their operations in the early 90s. But we're basically put in the middle of Montana or in western Montana, and they said, well, let's put a brewery in there, let's put a bar in there and a restaurant next to it. And they got some equipment together. They had a guy putting it together, but they needed somebody to get it started. So that family, they contacted my school. And Trudy said, well, all our brewmasters came from that school where, so we need somebody from that school. They contacted my school. I was supposed to go to Wuhan in central China in March of '88, and they wanted to get me over for 6 months to get it started, and I said, perfect. I looked at the map. I had no idea where Missoula, Montana even was. I mean, people said, well, it's close to Seattle. Well, I've never heard of Seattle either. So I looked at it. The only thing by looking at the map I recognized was actually Calgary, because where I was working and lived for quite some time in Germany, in Kaufbeuren, was a big hockey town. And the biggest bar in town, mind you, the Romans called that city Baronia, cobblestone, everything. The biggest bar in town was called Gretzky's. Anyway, I looked at the map, and I looked straight up north, and Calgary was only about an inch away from Missoula. And I said, well, cool. I mean, there's some hockey, Rocky Mountains, some skiing. I'm like, I was a 25-year-old. I said, well, I can do a little brewing and be a ski bum kind of at the same time, you know. see what there's to have. And then in April or in March of '88, I'm going to start my real job, which was supposed to be doing a startup operation with 5 other colleagues of mine in Wuhan in central China.
Right.
So I was on my way to China, sidetracked getting to Missoula, and I never left. It's a Missoula Eddie, like we have in some towns. If you can make it, you're not going to leave.
Sure.
And that's what happened.
But Arnie, you know where he was going to be going in China?
Yes.
What was it like?
In the middle of nowhere. He would have hated it.
Absolute nowhere.
Nowhere.
Really
Swimming
nowhere.
pool, tennis court. Once a month, maybe you get a trip to Shanghai with your colleagues.
By train.
But
by train.
No, by flight, but no income tax. And unlike Uncle Sam, if you're a German, if you're more than 180 days abroad, you're not paying any German income tax. So it was really attractive.
Yeah.
So
if you wanted to really be in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So let me ask you this for our listeners. You are a master brewer. Is that correct? Are you also a master brewer?
Yes, he is.
So what does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of breweries out there that operate without master brewers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So tell me the difference.
They're not even brewers.
Right, they're not even brewers.
What it is, like you have trade schools here.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can actually be an apprentice as a welder, as a plumber, as an electrician, for example. So we did the same thing as a brewer. So we got our journeyman certificates.
How long did it take for you to get to that point?
It usually takes 3 years.
Right. So it's serious.
Mine was a little bit shorter. I had really good grades. I cut it off by half a year. And then you become a journeyman. A journeyman is somebody that goes on the journey to collect experience in different areas.
Yes.
So for a regular brewmaster's degree, you have to do 3 years as a journeyman, and then you can go to the next school. But the school system is different over there. Torsten went a little bit a different route because he did not kick out in 10th grade out of Catholic boarding school like I did. So he went straight to 13th grade.
Yes.
I had to take my 10th grade degree and then do my apprenticeship that counted for another 3 years. And then I did my journeymanship another 3 years. And then I qualified to go to college. And then we both did the same college. We were both diploma master brewers. But it's a very strict and very it's a 2-year program. But make no mistake, you pack 4 years in 2 years.
So you got 6, 8, 10 years before you.
I got about 8 in there, and he has a little bit less in there. But then again, he didn't get kicked out of Catholic boarding school either.
The one thing about having that apprenticeship, journeyman school, trade school is. You go 3 months to school, so where you learn the theory behind brewing.
Right.
And the other advantage is the other 9 months you're working with people. And we still had people that worked after the war in the brewing industry.
Sure.
Until the next generation came in. And all that information, if you're interested, will be transferred on to you. So you're not just starting at zero. You really hit the ground running because you can pull all that information from your coworkers. Right. And having that degree is what you will need. If you want to be a brewer, you have to have that degree. It's not just knock, knock, I would like to work. Right. You have to show that you have the certificate to work in the brewery.
And you operate your brewery, Bayern, based on, as I read somewhere, the 1516 German law of purity?
Yeah, it's actually the oldest food law in the world that is still being practiced, even so in Germany after the EU came to fruition. Now the German brewers adhere to it because out of tradition, not because it's mandatory by law anymore.
And what does that law really mean? That's 600 years, 600, 700 years old now.
500. Yeah. It means you brew beer with malted barley, yeast, hops, and water, and nothing else. No berries, no fruits, no poisonous substances, no. And in those days, people were using, for example, they were substituting the hops for the bitterness of the beer with all kinds of different, whether it's bark or bile or what. Anyway, there was a time when things got too weird, and then King Ludwig I and Karl X, they decided to create a law that mandates beer to be brewed with only malted barley, yeast, hops, and water. It happened also to be that they were the largest landowners and barley field owners in the country. That certainly helped.
So how many of your competitors adhere to this?
In Missoula?
Well, competitors, wherever they're from.
I would say there's a lot of breweries out there that do German lager beers in addition to what they're doing. We are strictly adhering to the German lager.
Right.
But within that, you have a lot of different ways of brewing your beer. And, we never thought there was a need to have some grapefruit pilsner mixed with whatever. I mean, we're just old style.
No. We get those requests, though.
We
get those requests.
Well, I'm curious how you compete and against like the hoppy beers, like the pale ales and the IPAs, which everyone loves because it is the perceived the taste, but also the perceived the higher ABU. So help us understand that. First of all, how do you compete with them, and what's the closest in competition to something like that? And then, will you ever move in that direction? Will you ever do a special line that goes in that direction? And we may get a breaking news item here. I see that on Jürgen's face.
Well, first of all, I mean, we have the German philosophy of coming from a culture that are beer drinkers.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm 56 years old, and I can say I have not drank a 5-gallon bucket of water before I hit age 45. And I might be. I'm drinking a little bit more water now. Maybe I'm at 2 5-gallon buckets of water. So, for our understanding, beer is more food related than anything else.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you have food, you want something you can consume in quantities that does not throw you off, and it goes with other things as well. Now you have an extremely hot beer. I mean, then you have that particular product, which is fantastic and great. But, I mean, it's certainly not something that is designed to be consumed in
Solo.
Right.
Solo.
Yeah.
Only.
So that is part of it. Another thing is, again, in the beer industry, trends come and go. Right now, lager beers are having a gigantic comeback. I mean, if you go anywhere on the West Coast, I mean, they're coming back big time. And I think what is great is we have the variety of beers and the variety of flavors. So whatever anybody's preference is, you will find something in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that is great. However, I mean, consistent quality and a large customer base certainly helps. And also, even with our own limitations to the German law of purity, we still do different and new and exciting and interesting beers. Right now, we're having one coming out in very limited quantities. We only made one batch of it. We made a Rauch beer. It's not Rauch. Rauch. It's Rauch. It's a smoked beer. Well, hundreds of years ago, that barley malt needed to be dried over a kiln. They just put a fire underneath it. So all beers were smoky. Now, you find in our landscape sometimes those extreme beers, like a smoked porter with 8, 9, 10% alcohol and so on. But what we are doing is we are just doing classic German beer styles. I mean, most of the beers, what we're brewing at Bayern, I mean, I can tell you ask me what beer it is and where it's coming from. I can tell you what brewery I worked for, how many of those colleagues of mine are still alive that have brewed it then with me. And why and where that all came together.
Sure.
But we also do new things, too. So, I mean, it's not... Being traditional is not necessarily boring.
Right.
Right.
But we don't have to follow every trend either.
I understand that.
So 31 years later from when you started, are you where you thought you would be back in 1987?
Oh, God, in 1987, what was I thinking? I mean...
I mean, are you bigger than you thought you would be? Are you has the product line and the brewery grown to a point that you imagined it would, or is it beyond what you thought it could possibly be? Being in Missoula, Montana.
Well, let me rephrase the question.
Sure.
I mean, it's just when you're doing something, you just keep going. It's not, I mean, being a tradesperson like I am, I mean, you just do your trade, you do as best as you can, you see where it leads you. It is not that you have that idea. Okay, I'm going to do this company now. In 5 years, it has to be
Right.
a $5 million company, and in 10 years, it's not Amazon.
Right.
Okay, so you just take it day by day and see where it leads. But the thing was, if you're on your own, you don't have investors. Everything is financed through banks. I mean, you just work as long as you can every single day and just see where it goes.
And how big are you now?
Yeah.
Well, for our listeners.
Well, we're doing 10,000 barrels.
Wow.
That's a mouthful.
That's a lot.
And when did you guys decide to integrate the food? When you the restaurant upstairs? And how long was that in the planning until execution? Because that was only opened a few years ago, correct?
That was open 3 years ago. Well, I mean, we had that space upstairs, and we wanted to fill it.
Is that the Edelweiss Bistro?
That's the Edelweiss Bistro. Mm-hmm. And every brewery in Germany has a little Brauerei Gasthof where you can get some food that complements the beer.
Pretzels and mustard.
Well, by the way, nobody in the world eats pretzels and mustard except here.
I know.
Schnitzel.
They eat pretzels, no mustard.
So, I mean, we had the space upstairs. We used it as a banquet room and for special events. But also, it was a dream of mine. I mean, when we were brewing beer, we were also cooking. We were just cooking large batches of things, you know. So putting that together, I mean, it was kind of a dream, and also it was creating a different accent point to the whole brewery. But when you come and visit the brewery, you get the full experience. You get a German experience. You get a German meal. You get a German beer, and it all complements each other.
A quick question. Is there a large German-American community in Missoula in western Montana? Or have you really helped build it?
There is. There are probably more Scandinavians than there are Germans, but there are quite a few. But then again, I mean, think about it. If you look at where we live, we're looking at mountains. We're looking at skiing. I mean, just go up to Whitefish. I mean, you cannot escape the Bavarian influence one way or the other.
No,
I mean,
and
that Alpine thing is just there.
Yeah.
You know, and I always wanted to do some food. I mean, the German theme fit in just fine too, because that's what's going with what we are doing. So it was kind of a natural development over the years. I would have done it earlier, but it was simply not possible.
Right. And are you importing your food from Germany, or is it local product?
Okay, both. For example, all of our meats, we basically source from the same sources where the good food store gets their stuff from. So we have all our pork for the schnitzels. I mean, all the pork has been raised in Whitehall. We have smart chicken from Summit Distribution in Bozeman. We try to get our vegetables and everything local. You will never see an FSA truck in front of the brewery.
Good.
So it kind of, we also embrace the idea of being sustainable. That means getting our sources from as much local as possible, which in a brewery is not that easy.
No.
I mean, yes, we have some malt houses here, but they're very big malt houses. But on the other hand, I mean, that goes also hand in hand with our program of taking our glass back. We are the only brewery that is washing glass. We basically, the idea of using a bottle that was supposed to be just thrown away, figuring out you can actually use it again. I mean, that was part of our philosophy. And the restaurant kind of worked in the same pattern with it. Get your stuff locally, whatever you can resource from your area that makes it more sustainable and that makes you more present.
Sure. You're both master brewers. How do you divide your responsibilities in the business?
Simple. I hide in my little office.
And you do all the work.
I lock the office. And then I do my work.
But you both have a similar sense of humor.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I know Torsten from I just met Jurgen.
Yeah.
But he's got a great sense of humor, and I don't know when he's serious or not. And then I look at him and I'm like, he's giving me the business. He's the same way.
Yeah.
Is this is the part of the personality and the charm of Bayern, I think.
Well,
is that your guys' personality is part of
Here's
this.
another German word. It's called Bier Ernst.
Yeah.
It's the beer seriousness.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's how I would describe it.
That's amazing. And so that is like Got it. So that's what informs you guys in what you do every day.
Yeah,
Is that the guiding principle?
A good sense of humor certainly helps.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm curious. Do you have visitors from Germany who, drink the beer and they say, "God, this is just like back at home"? That really feel like this is extension of what they would find back in Bavaria.
Actually, believe it or not, I get some comments,
Better.
especially when some of my friends visit me that are colleagues of ours.
Yes.
And they go, "Man, you brew just like we did over 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago." And I said, "Yeah, that's what we brought over here, so we're actually proud of that." And it's just our beer has a story. There's a story behind it.
Yes.
It's not like the cutest hops and the plumpest looking barley kernel and the yeast with a big smile on its face. No, I mean, there's a reason, there's a purpose, and there's a story behind it.
Yeah, but you do have some have some cute names though, like Dancing Trout and Dump Truck, for example. I mean, those fit in. Face Plant.
If you look back how that all developed, back in the day it was Bayern Amber, Bayern Pilsner, and that's classic German. It's a brewing name and the style you brew.
Right.
And then the whole microbrew industry, back in the day, that's what it was called.
Right.
They all came up with the words. There's a fat tire, there is a full sail, there's a moose drool. So they developed these names, and that was the interesting part about craft. It wasn't just the beer anymore, it's the story behind it. And that's when we adapted to that market, and there's a Dancing Trout, there is a Dragon's Breath. All these beers now are classic Bavarian German recipes, but with a story behind it.
Sure.
So we adapted to that market.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to just say is you guys are really getting on the whole sustainability, and Jürgen, you just mentioned that, but that's really a big push for you guys, and it probably has been. But tell us a little bit about that. Like, that's part of your advertising. That's part of they have their own saying, kind of, which I'd like you to repeat. Does Bayern feel a responsibility to live a sustainable and operate a business in a sustainable, your carbon footprint, right? Like honor that. Tell us about that. What started that?
Well, I mean, what started it is basically our mentality, how we were both brought up.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at Germany right now, well, for the most part of Europe, our rate of recycling rate is over 97%. And of course, everybody says, "Why can't we have that here?" Well, I said, we have a big country. We don't have a big population. I mean, things are just it's not that easy.
Sure.
But the mindset when somebody thinks, I can produce as much garbage as I want, but I mean, I can recycle it and then I feel good. That is something that is a feel-good thing. But when you go for something that is called a carbon footprint, you see product that you're making,
right?
How much fossil fuels, carbon emissions, and so on you have, and then you can reduce that, and then you see where you're going with that. And when I recall, it was back like in 1982. I mean, that in the state of Bavaria is the largest state in Germany. It has 7 districts. My district, it's right in the middle of the beautiful Alps. I mean, Castle Neuschwanstein, the King Ludwig Castle is right in the middle of it. We outlawed aluminum cans in 1982. Flat out. You could buy canning machines that do 100,000 cans an hour, and you could pick up one of those used. In the 80s, you could have picked one up for like $20,000. That same machine new is probably $2.5 million. And they just went away from it. Germany right now, as of 2021 in the EU, you won't see Q-tips anymore. You won't see any straws made out of plastic anymore. You won't. Coca-Cola is now talking about possibly going back into bottles because they are they're getting under scrutiny for creating islands of plastic swimming in the ocean. But I mean, I think we all have a responsibility, and our kids and our grandkids, they will point at us and say, "Okay, everybody understands the principle of economics." Like morale is about how the world should work, and economics, how it does work. But what we are doing, it may work economically, but it's irresponsible if you go another generation or two from here. And those
Sure.
kids, they will ask us someday, what were you guys doing? You know, we should take, in my eyes, we should take an inventory of our planet, see what we have, and make it last as long as possible.
Sure.
And not just blowing out like there's no way, there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right, of course. But it's a central message now to your marketing, which is I think it cuts through the clutter too.
It cuts through the clutter, and what we are offering people is we give you a real beer, no fruits, no berries, for somebody that likes to drink a real beer. But we are also giving our consumers a green choice. And that's the choice we are making. When I look at our bottles versus a new bottle that is made partially out of recycled glass, and I look at an aluminum can, well, our carbon footprint is 1 pound of carbon dioxide per 100 fills. Your normal non-returnable bottle is 37 pounds. And your aluminum can is 88 pounds, almost 100 times as much as what we are doing.
It's that.
It's almost 100 times.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And when I saw that in the early 80s, we went away from that. And now here we're going towards it. And I said, you know what? I've never been mainstream anyway. That's another thing with our beers. After over 30 years of being in business here, well, we have our own products and we have our own trends. Part of the secret of our longevity is that we are not chasing every trend that came around. We were just doing our own thing. And we are continuing to do that. And, we're doing what we think is the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's great.
It kind of brings us back what Jürgen said in the beginning. In 87, there was nothing out here, and that is what our washing operation is. Sure, there's a technology out there. That's what we purchased, the bottle washer. But there's no infrastructure to get the gas back to the brewery.
Right.
There is no message out yet, no other channels you can work with. You have to create that from scratch. And we are now at a rate where we have 100% of reused bottle go through the facility. So it took us 5-6 years to get to that point, but we finally have enough volume come back to cover our needs. And like I said, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We purchased technology and installed it.
What I find refreshing that what you guys are talking about is you're not just saying it, but you're actually truly living it to the core of your business. So it's not like it's a new initiative. It's what it is.
No, we're doing it. But it's also part of it is we are not a group of investors and shareholders where everybody has to vote. This is a discretion that I have. I can decide this is what we're going to do.
Sure.
No, like we can.
You're answering to yourself.
Work as many hours as we want, and it's just something. This is who we are, and this is what we are doing. And thank God we don't have to ask anybody's permission to do it.
Right.
I mean, that's a good thing.
Before I let you go, because I know you have to go, and that's my fault. One last thing, I want to give you an opportunity to say anything else, but I want to know what's next. Like what's on the horizon for you guys in terms of, you launched a new product this past summer, right? Or this past
what's
spring?
the future look like?
Tell us what the future looks like, because that's the thing we like to talk to all of our guests about. What is down the road, and what do you see yourselves doing with Bayern that you're not doing today where you'd like to be? Even if it's a pipe dream, but what is it? Like, what's driving you besides doing great product, making a great product and being clearly responsible to the environment and serving great food? Because you don't do anything that doesn't have quality attached to it. That's the brand ethos. That's how I see it, at least as a consumer. So
where are you headed?
Well, where we are heading is, probably. Well, we pioneered things in a lot of different ways. Like what we're doing. Having the only glass washing machine in the United States. By the way, there's now a couple other companies that have one, and. We are starting under contract actually to wash some glass for some breweries in Oregon. They have a bottle bill was 10 cents a bottle, and they created a returnable bottle. We're doing that for them. Personally, I would like to be an advocate and an ambassador for doing that. Product-wise, we still have lots of ideas up our sleeves with different products, and we're trying to stick with our traditional way of brewing beer in a very non-traditional approach, so to speak. And well, I mean, we're on a very solid footing. We still like to have fun with what we are doing.
Yeah, you guys look like that you don't want to have a boring day any day.
It's not boring.
There's no. Are you surprised or are you impressed with the how fast, or I guess the microbrewing industry grew here in Montana?
There's 80 of them.
We're pushing 100.
Really? There's up to 100 now?
That really is surprising because, again, when you...
There's only 1 million people here.
I know. But, I mean, here's one thing, too. I mean, people always saying, well, you're the granddaddy of the microbrewing industry. Or you're doing this and that. Whenever you are the first or the only one doing something, it is an ungrateful job. You wait a generation.
Being a pioneer.
I mean, we're very proud of... making it possible that industry exists.
Right.
And I think we did a lot of the footwork. Sometimes my younger colleagues, they look at me with a blank look when I say, well, I bought a brand new fax machine or a used fax machine in 1989 for $750. No, we did not have cell phones. No, we did not have Facebook.
Yeah.
So all the things that the newcomers take for granted that are just there, I think... well, we take credit that, hey, don't leave us completely out of sight.
No, you're the pioneer.
We were kind of making it possible that you can do all that stuff.
And you're still a young man, so that's, I mean...
Yeah, you're young, but do they seek out your counsel and they seek out your advice? Like,
well, everybody comes and then they have their own ideas, and then we see where it goes. But I have a good old friend of mine, Jamie Emerson, and he was basically the motor behind Full Sail Brewing Company, and he just retired, and he's a dear old friend of mine. And he said, "Young, think about how many breweries we have started." And I said, "What do you mean, Jamie?" He said, "Well, just about everybody within 60 miles of our brewery in Hood River, they were more or less started by former Full Sail employees, you know." Yeah. And for us, I mean, that's a very similar thing too. So you're kind of...
They're your children.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, in one way or another, I mean, you just kind of get that satisfaction out of it.
Bastard offspring. How about that? Yeah. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you today.
You guys are great. Thank you so much for coming in. We have Torsten and Jürgen from Bayern Brewing.
Our favorite.
Thanks for having us.
They're great partners of ours too. We, they do a lot of work with us. Thank you guys.
Take care.
Appreciate that.
Take care.
Right, you're very welcome. Prost. Happy Halloween.
Arnie, I really was pleased that Jürgen and Torsten gave us as much time as they did. And again, I'm sorry for being late, but I will tell you, I felt like they shared a lot of good information, and I love their commitment to the community and sustainability.
I like the fact that they consider their beer is their legacy, not their bottles, which is a good way to look at it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And they're committed to 100% refillable glass, and removing their carbon footprint.
Jürgen Noller and Torsten Goyer. I hope I did. I'm sure I'm screwing that up, and he'll kill me because I see him all the time.
But it's a positive comment in our community that two master brewers, German master brewers, have come here to live and practice their craft.
It says a ton about Missoula.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I mean,
Montana.
Came and never left.
Well, Arnie, I appreciate it. I will see you again next week.
See you next week, Scott.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichman@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO,